Good evening, everyone. It is Chasing Dreams Live Thursday. So happy to be here again. This is Lisa McLean, CEO and founder of IamLisaMcLean.com. And every Thursday, we get together and we have a chat about all things to do with publishing, books, education, but mostly publishing, mostly getting our story out there because your story is important and someone is waiting to hear your story so that they are encouraged to keep moving along and building theirs. So tonight we actually have a guest speaker. Hi, Michael. Good to see you. And tonight, as with last night, because we have a guest speaker, we will be streaming live on YouTube and Facebook. So my Instagram peeps, I'm going to ask you to jump across to Lisa McLean Publications on YouTube and Facebook because we will not be able, you won't be able to see our guest on IG. So if you want to hop across now is a good time while we do our housekeeping. And we always start off with talking about chasing our dreams and making sure that you're chasing those dreams one step at a time. And I like to start by sharing that one step that you took this week. So if you took one step towards chasing those dreams and accomplishing those big audacious goals, share it in the chat, please. And for me, what was my one step towards chasing my dreams this week? I reached out to my cousin, and she became my new accountability partner. And so we've agreed, because that's so important, right? We have all of these lists of things we want to do. And when life gets overwhelming and we get busy and we get tired, we keep putting things off. And I said, you know what? I do need a check-in person who understands the process I'm going through, who also needs an accountability partner. And so that was my big to-do this week. So in addition to my lovely, my group that I talk to all the time and they keep me on track, I've made sure I found that one person and we set out our strategy for the week so we know what we're reporting on next week. So if that's a little push you need to chase your dreams, then accountability partner might work for you as well. So remember to share, let me know in the chat, what you're doing to chase your dreams and accomplish your goals. Tonight, we are talking about business basics for authors. So often we jump into the publishing world and we get excited and we think, yes, I'm going to publish a book. And we forget that we do need to add a little bit of structure, that there are systems that we need to put in place from a business perspective. Especially if you're looking at developing this as an additional source of income or a particular career pathway, an additional career pathway. If it's just like one-off, we'll see. Maybe it's not as essential, but I think even if you're publishing one book, I think there is some information that our guest has to share tonight that you will still find invaluable. So I am going to welcome Richard McFarlane let me add him. Hi, Richard. How are you?
Hey Lisa, how are you doing?
I am good, thanks. So I'm going to give our guests a little bit of a background to Richard and who he is. And Richard and I have worked together before. We teach in similar spaces sometimes. And Richard is a financial controller with the KLE Group, and he has been an accountant since 2006. Welcome, Richard.
Thanks for having me, Lise. Really glad to be here on your platform and share what little knowledge I have, and hopefully it's beneficial and helps somebody in their journey as they start business and create their revenue stream or whatever it is.
But I'm pretty excited about this conversation, and Richard knows this because I'm forever running to him with all kinds of business questions. So I thought it's a good idea to have those conversations and spend one of our Thursday sessions sharing this kind of information. So Just a reminder to anyone who is on Instagram Live to hop on over to Lisa McLean Publications on Facebook and YouTube because we are streaming live, and that's where you'll get a chance to see our guest. And so I'm going to jump in with my first question. One of the things that I did not do initially and was recommended to me, what I want to say late in my publishing journey, was that there was a benefit to actually registering a business. And so
Right.
I want to start there. Is there an advantage for authors to register a business and use that business as a framework under which they publish their books, as opposed to it just being a personal endeavor and everything falls within their personal sphere?
Okay, so that's a good thing. That's a good question. All right, so like everything else, or like other profession or artistic professions, whether you become an artist, or and by artist I mean like a singer or something like that, you, as you said in the beginning, you want to add structure to what you're doing. All right, that's the very first thing. There can be so many benefits. There's so many benefits that can be derived from setting up your publication as a business as opposed to just you're an author writing books. All
Mm-hmm.
right. Now, and again, piggybacking on what you said earlier, whether it just be one book or several, it is always instrumental, or it's always important that you set up whatever you're doing as a business. All right. And more importantly, it's important that you set it up autonomously and separate from yourselves. All right. So all authors should not only seek to just be setting up a business as a sole trade or a partnership or whatever it is. But the recommendation I always offer to persons is that if you're going to start something, you want to start it as a LLC. In Jamaica, we just call it a limited company, a LTD company. In America, we call it the LLC. All right. So the reason why you want to do that is that number one, the most important reason is that everything that you're doing, you want to attack it from a business mindset. All right. And there are so many things you need to be considering in the future. Let's say for the person who is going to be having this as a job, all right, or they're looking to make this their main income stream. All right. If you're a Jamaican or American, you're going to run into a lot of problems when you're looking for proof of income, etc., and stuff like that. All right, but not to jump too ahead of ourselves, but that's just one of the things that you're going to want to consider in your personal life. All right, but we'll get to that a little bit later. So the first thing you want to do is set up as an LLC. In the event that anything should happen, I will not say anything that has happened, but if you're not too prepared, sometimes entering the business where a lot of liabilities can fall upon you, a lot of unexpected obligations, you might misstep or whatever. And it's always the case when you start in business. A learning curve, all right? And if you're not too sharp, then the learning curve might be steep and it might catch you off guard. One of the things that you want to do is to protect yourself right from the jump by forming your company as a limited liability company. What this does is that legally, it sets you up, and by law, it sets you up to be recognized separate and apart from the entity that you have created. So if you are writing books, you want to set up a publication for yourself. All right. And what happens is that should there be any, little things that the company runs into, your only liability, or you only stand to lose what you have invested in the book or the publication company that you have created, but you do not stand to lose anything from a personal standpoint. All right, you don't lose anything in your personal life, but you will only stand to lose your investment in that particular project that you've undertaken. So that would be the biggest reason for setting up your publication as a. I mean, all the time, a lot of times you hear, and this is I digress a little bit, but a lot of times you'll hear rappers or other authors say they went bankrupt, or a lot of famous people saying they go bankrupt. Now, what happens is that comes as a result of poor planning, or not. There's a lack of expectation. They didn't manage their expectations, and what will happen is that afterwards they will always be preaching about they should have started an LLC. So even if you're just a singer, you're a one-man show.
Right.
What will be beneficial to you is that if everything that you do, every income that you earn, every stage that you step on, every book that you write, everything that you publish, you want to run it through that company. Every dollar that's coming out is funneled through that company. Every dollar that is going in is funneled through that company. So you're protected for tax purposes, as well as you're protected just in general from having any again missteps, for want of better words,
Right.
right? So if you register your company as an LLC, what you find is that there is a benefit to be derived in terms of your liability. You're not as exposed, right? And that's the major reason. There is more, but perhaps we'll get into it a little bit more later on in the night.
Okay. And I mean, having done that, I mean, that's not sufficient, right? So you go ahead, you register your business.
Mhm.
Um, that's one of those big ticket kind of items. What about on a
Right,
daily basis? Because certainly as a new author, there
right.
as I went along and I realized, okay, they're not just expenses connected to
Hmm.
the contractors you take on. There are other things that come up. I remember with my
Hmm.
first book, I was totally floored with what the overall costing was. It was definitely not anything that I anticipated. And I, having gone into it as more of a passion, it was more of a
Right,
passion project. I didn't consider systems and structures and having things in place to monitor any of this.
right,
So, as someone who, and I'm thinking of those authors who are coming to it from a space of passion or something that they enjoy, who
right.
don't necessarily have a
Mhm.
business background, what are some basic systems and structures that authors should consider having in place once they start venturing down this road?
Okay, so first and foremost, you mentioned a really key point right here, and I think a lot of it speaks to financial space. You were floored by a lot of the expenses. Now, again, when you venture in anything, you want to treat it, you want to approach it with a business mindset. Whether it be a passion project, it can be something that you love, but you don't want this thing that you love to be crushing you. All right, so we can just we can just lay that one out there right from the get go. Now, the first thing is that you want to have a solid plan. All right, you want to have a business plan in terms of when you're starting off. Okay, you want to say how is everything going to be accounted for. All right, you want to have clear steps on the vision. You want to have clear steps of how you're going to get where you're going to get. All right, in other words, you will not be able to necessarily see every single expense that's coming your way. All right, but you should have some reasonable projection. All right, now a lot of banks, whenever you're starting a business, they want you to have, if you haven't started a business as yet and you want to open a business bank account, they want you to have at least a cash flow projection. That is not only beneficial to the bank, that is
Yeah.
also instrumental for you. You will get a sincere idea. Now, we all do things to look pretty to the bank so that we can get what we need from them. But at the same time, it gives you an opportunity to honestly reflect on what this is going to be, what it is going to cost, and there should be in your cash flow at least a section to say these are unexpected expenses or unexpected spending that might arise as a result. All right, there should have been research. Mhm.
But so explain to us what you mean by a cash flow projection, because those of us who
Okay.
don't necessarily have a business background may not understand what you're trying
Right.
to.
Okay. So a cash flow projection is basically the bank or your desire to find out what is the income and what are the expenses of this venture. All right. Now, cash flow is not to be confused with a income statement or a profit and loss statement where you're measuring profit. A cash flow doesn't tell you profit, but a cash flow will tell you, I am going to spend this, I'm going to make this in January, and I'm
Yeah.
going to spend this in January. And at the end of January, I should have X amount of money. Going into February, I have that same amount of money, and February, I expect to make this and I expect to spend this. At the
Right.
startup, you will have more intense costs, I will say, because the startup costs are always heavier, but they are not prolonged or protracted throughout throughout the entire year. All right, but this will give you a fair view. If you are honest with with your projection, it will give you a fair view of what you should be spending and what you expect to make. All right. Now, a lot of us we jump the gun, or we are very excited, or we're passionate, and we say we're going to make, but yeah, again, this takes a little bit of soberness for us to decide, okay, this is what I really expect to make. You write a book. I mean, no one knows if you write out the gate, you right off the bat. Perhaps a million copies shouldn't be your projection. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So, you're speaking to a lot of people, so you should have a sober projection in your mind. Now, you make that cash flow projection. All right. And this will then be a part of your initial steps. This will be a part of your initial steps in setting up your business. All right. Because then it will give you, okay, this is what I intend to be. This is what I intend to make on a month to month basis. All right. You may fall short, but you know you at least have a goal that you are shooting for. So back to our initial question where we're saying, what are some of the systems that a young publisher should set in place? Number one, you should have a business plan, not just any old plan, but it should be a business plan. Otherwise, it remains as a hobby. That's what most speakers would say. If you do not have a business plan, it is not a business, it is just a hobby. You have a product, not a business.
And just to clarify, I mean, this doesn't have to be one of these really elaborate business
No,
plans that very detailed, dense.
absolutely not.
Just
Absolutely not.
so, what would you consider to be 3 or 4 basics that would comprise something like that? So you
A business
talk,
plan?
yeah, like a nice mini kind of skeletal framework that's easy to put in.
Okay, good. All right. So as cash flow, a business plan. You asked about a business plan. I
Yeah.
thought you asked about the
You
cash
said
flow.
cash flow
All right.
projection.
So,
What else would
mhm.
be important to consider? That would be a nice
All right.
basic structure, a basic framework.
Okay. So in your business plan, you should be speaking to what type of business you're setting it up as. And we spoke about that earlier, whether it be a LLC, a sole trader. Again, I advise against sole traders or partnerships, always an LLC. All right, to limit the exposure. All right. So that's the first thing. So secondly, you want to have your cash flow projection. Thirdly, you want to know the market you're entering into, your target audience, right? So you have to have your market. Fourthly, your target audience. Number five, who you're going to be speaking to. That way, you can somehow gauge how much you expect to receive, right?
Right.
Or so when you're writing your cash flow projection, this is going to give you an indicator of how much you expect to receive. So let's say, for example, we live in the island of Jamaica. We're saying to ourselves, we're writing books for women. We want to know out of the population of 3 million or something, how many women are here? How many women are mothers? Say you're writing a book for mothers. How many women are mothers? How many women are mothers that read books or enjoy a book as opposed to a movie or something like that, right? You don't even have to do these big elaborate surveys or anything like that. You can just gather 10 people, 5 inside of your circle, 5 outside of your circle, and you say, okay, what percentage of these 10 women are mothers that read?
Right.
Right? So you have the 5 in your circle, which is going to be a very biased 5. You're going to get those. But you have
Yeah.
the 5 that's outside of your circle that they're objective. You cannot influence their decision either way. Right? And so you take that and you can compile something to say, all right, I expect 20% of women who are da da da. So out of the population, you have 1 million women. All right? Out of that 1 million, only 50% are mothers. Out of that 50%, 20% read. So you can then narrow down your field to say, I am going for this market. So in other words, what you have done is successfully created a funnel, right? And this is what I give to all of my clients that I do business plans for. You've successfully created a funnel that helps you to determine, okay, how much of this market can I get, or how much of this market is accessible, and you then have to put in that legwork to say, I am fighting for this entire market, if anything. You know what I'm saying? So your business plan doesn't have to be something big and elaborate. It can be just as simple as that, and you only need those 5 things. Because really and truly, you always want to know how much you want to make, and you control your expenses and your costs.
Right. Okay. So just to kind of
Right.
sum up what Richard just said. So you're a nice, not an elaborate business plan, because that may be
Doesn't have to be.
starting out, but you definitely want to give
Mhm.
thought to the type of business you're going to register as, which should be, as you
Right.
mentioned, LLC, cash flow projections, who's your market, who's
Mhm.
your audience. Nice.
Right.
So you said business plan. Anything else, any other
Right.
things that we should be putting in place? So we have a
All right.
plan.
So now,
What's
so
next?
you should be putting say again. I thought, did you say something again?
Mhm.
Okay. So another thing that you want to be putting in place is in putting the business into place, right? You want to separate your personal life. All right. If you might have two intentions. Again, this might just remain a passion project to you. We're not necessarily, I won't be speaking to that side of things, but I'll be
Right.
speaking to the person who wants to make it a business. All right. So now for the person who wants to make it a business, you have to now consider salary versus no salary. When do you start taking a salary from the business? How does that affect you in terms of the business paying taxes, you paying taxes? How do you earn versus how does the business earn? And what is that dynamic? Does the business pay you? Do you just treat it as one big thing? And whenever the business gets money, you sold $5, $500, you just put that into your personal account. How does that work? The recommendation, as we said before, is to always maintain them separately, which means that if I am Richard McFarlane Publications, right? That is a business that I'm going to set separate and apart from myself, right? Richard McFarlane, however, needs to be paid, okay? Because if you want to make a business out of this, you have to get a salary from it. Richard McFarlane now has to consider when he wants to access debt, right? He wants to buy a car, he wants to buy a house, he wants to do all that stuff. Now, the requirements of a bank or any lending institution is going to be very strict if you consider yourself one and the same with the business. They're going to want your tax compliance if we're speaking for Jamaica, where they're going to want your tax compliance. They're going to want how many months worth of bank statements. They're going to want this and that. Whereas if I'm operating as an individual being paid by a company, they simply want 3 months pay slip and the bank statement for the account which the money is going into, right? So you want to set the business separate from yourself and then create, again, this doesn't need an overly accountant mind or an overly entrepreneurial mind or anything like that. A payroll system is something simple that you can just go on any tax website and they'll tell you how to calculate your taxes. And then what will happen is that the company will now pay you. You create a payroll for yourself or you create a payslip for yourself that you can now use. So you have to now essentially be considering your personal life and what are the implications of me being separate from my business, or how do I operate or how do I function regularly now that I have a business separate and apart from me. All right. So that's one of the major things I think should be considered.
So, I mean, I would then extend and say, so separate bank accounts, right? So you definitely want your business.
Separate bank accounts. So your business has a bank account separate from you personally.
Yeah.
So the first thing you want to do after you've set up the business is set up a bank account. It's very much easier to do it right out the gate. Once the business has become operational and functional, the demands become more. The demands have increased once a bit. So the minute you set up the business, it is, I think, easier. Not I think, but I know it is easier to get a bank account once you have just set up the business, like fresh out the gate, nothing has happened, no operations. It's a smoother ride. So you keep your business account separate from your personal account. Don't mangle the funds, because for accounting purposes, and we're diving into our next topic here, but let's go. So for accounting purposes, let's say, for example, you want to set up, because you don't want to have your money just willy-nilly and writing things on paper and you're throwing some stuff around in Excel and everything like that. You want to have a thorough accounting system. All right. It doesn't, again, have to be, you could get some guidance from somebody who is in the space, who is in the accounting space. But again, especially after the coronavirus, a lot of people became DIY experts. And this is something that anybody can know. You can go on YouTube and find any accounting software. You can try Zoho, you can try, what's the next one called?
Wave.
You can try QuickBooks, you can try P3, you can try Wave. Yes, you can try Wave. These are all online platforms that you can use. So yeah, you don't want to just go around start writing down things and say I sold this day and I spent this and all that. You want to have a thorough system. And when you have a system like that, it is not going to be it's not advised that you're just using your account as the business's account and you're just mangling the two, because then the entries to be made when you just take some money out of your account, which is essentially the business account, just to buy a bottle of water or just to get some lunch, that confuses the entire process. When it's time to file your taxes, you're going to have to start thinking about, okay, is this tax deductible? What comes under here? Blah, 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 all this stuff. And it drives you crazy separating the transaction, what was personal versus what was for the business. It is always, and I cannot stress that enough, always advised to keep them separate.
Wow. So Richard, is like you're saying we can't just have fun writing books all the time. There has
No, yes, you can, but no, you can have fun writing the books as well as setting a business up.
but there needs to be some structure. And
Structure, there has to
very
be.
important, very important. And you know, it's so funny because when
Right.
you're actually setting up your accounts with some of these self-publishing platforms, you know, they're going to be asking you this information. They're going, you know, once you start stating who you're representing as, you know, when you are you representing as a company versus an individual,
Right.
even just in issuing tax information to you and tax documentation, that's just kind of automatic. So it's so much easier if you have all of these systems streamlined from the outset, as opposed to
Yes,
trying
right
to,
out the gate.
yeah,
Right.
backtracking is a lot more difficult.
One of the hardest things is trying to play catch up once you've gone 4, 5, 6 months into your business. It's way worse. You know.
Right, absolutely. And again, it's trying to what we're trying to do is suggest simple things that we can do on our own until
Right.
your publications business has expanded and has grown into at a size where you can actually now hire an accountant or contract someone to do all of this for you. So we
Right.
talked about having some kind of a business plan. We talked about ensuring that you have some kind of accounting software to keep track of income and expenses. Um,
Yes.
and we've certainly talked about keeping things separate and
Right.
being very clear about that. Is there anything else that you would suggest that would be an essential? And I mean, the nature of publications too is such that it starts off very slowly. Rarely do you
Right.
write a book and instantly you're a New York Times bestseller overnight. There does tend to be
Right.
some kind of buildup. So I'm thinking of just really easy systems that we can rule out and start off with. Is there anything else that you think is a major consideration for somebody who is new to business that they need to think about?
All right. One final thing I think I would say, and this is both business as well as just maintaining a level head, is just have a clear goal of where you're going. All right. The business plan should help you with this, but it is
Right.
always important after every step to know that you have hurdled that particular step. All right. So you say you're trying to, let's say one of your, you mentioned your, I call them BHAGs back in the day,
Yeah,
BHAG.
your big,
Big,
hairy,
hairy,
audacious.
audacious. Right, right, right. So you set your big, hairy, audacious goals, but within that hairy, audacious goal, you set the smaller goals. All right. And from a financial perspective, you want to have a clear figure in your head. All right. So your business plan will help you with this, but at the same time, this is something you can't take too lightly. All right. To just say, I'm going to do this. Your vision has to be clear every step of the way. All right. So your vision has to be clear every step of the way. Every milestone has to be marked by a number. It's this amount. It's this amount of copies. It's this amount of downloads, etc., etc. And you want to use that as your catapult to say, okay, I'm going in this direction. Once you've heard of something else, where am I going to next? It's not supposed to just be something that's just up in the air where you're thinking to yourself, all right, I'm going to go here, and there's just no, again, we're using this word a lot, but there's just no structure to it. There just has to be structure to everything. All right, unless you're leaving it as a passion project, and that's just it. Yeah.
And I like the fact that you talk about projecting, knowing where you want to be. And I mean,
Right.
you have to be open to being flexible and being open to shifting and changing. But I also think it's important for new authors to consider the potential of or the range of things that you could explore as a publications business because you
Right.
have books and you're not confined to books in publishing. You can
And
expand the range of formats that you can publish those books in, whether it's e-copy, hard copy. You can be looking at merchandising. You can be looking at podcasts. You can be looking at webinars. You can be
right.
looking at a whole range of spin-offs of your products. And it's good to think about what you would consider as potential options when you start, because you don't want to jump in and you have a book and then you find that you're sinking and you're like, oh, okay, what should I do? What should I do? Like it's good to know from the outset what avenues you think you're interested in, so that you
Right.
know how you can build out and how you can stagger your growth. You know, well, what do I need to focus on for the first 3 months? And so you know whether, okay, for those first 3 or 6 months, do I really want to be drawing a salary, or do I want to be taking whatever I'm earning and
Right.
just into the business, so that you can then do a spin-off? You know, are you working on a series? Are you working on, so you know how you want to be channeling your cash flow.
And that is so perfect that you said that, because in accounting we call that, each time I'm setting up what is called a chart of accounts for somebody, what a chart of accounts really is in accounting is where you say, these are all the accounts I'll be using. I'll be using traveling, I'll be using electricity, I'll be using telephone, I'll be using whatever, whatever. But also in that chart of accounts, you have to tell all the streams of revenue that you must have, right? So normally when I ask somebody, when I'm setting up a chart of accounts, I ask them, what are your streams, plural, of revenue? Because very rarely do I expect somebody to be setting up a business and just set it up to earn, okay, I'm just selling this, and that's the end of it.
Right.
There are invariably always spin-offs of what you're doing. You know what I'm saying? There's always spin-offs of what you're doing, and it is always important to have these spin-offs so that one revenue stream can compensate for the other one if the other one is kind of lacking. All right, and that also goes back to when you're registering the business. You should, and this is something I missed earlier, but I'm glad that you said it. So you should make your business, because when you're registering the business, they always want to ask you what the primary service of the business is. Make it as open as possible. That's something I forgot to say. All right, make it as open as possible. All right, so that your revenue stream, when you set up your chart of accounts, let's say, for example, an accountant, all right, or a person who's setting up an accounting firm. If you set up an accounting firm, it kind of limits you, all right, because especially in Jamaica, they're gonna say there's a certain requirement that you have to have, and it keeps you boxed in, and you can only do that. If you were to change your registration to a consulting firm, then you can do bookkeeping, you can do that accounting, you can do tax, you can do business consultation, you can do business plans, you can do this, you can do all sorts of stuff. All right. And so your revenue streams, you can facilitate a broader revenue stream. All right. And so even the name, even just the thought that you give to the name, don't just box yourself into that one thing, because then a company might start it as one thing and then look at Lasco. Lasco started out with a pouch and now they have a financial service, you know what I'm saying? So you want to keep the name nice and open so that you can facilitate growth, basically. And you saying, okay, I'm going to, in the future, there might be other things besides books. It can become webinars, it can become speaking engagements, it can become, signings, etc. It can be different things. It can become a YouTube channel. It can be so many things. And so you want to keep that part open and plan and budget for, give yourself room for ingenuity. Yeah.
I'm going to add that. Leave room for ingenuity. I like that idea. You really don't ever want to
Yes.
have a very static plan at all.
Yeah. You always want to give yourself room for ingenuity. I know one person who started a business and it was supposed to be one thing. And because of this particular product or this service that they offered, they started printing shirts. And they found out people are just buying shirts. They come into them for printing shirts and printing buttons and stuff like that. And all of a sudden, what they started the business to do, it just became something completely different. And their strongest revenue stream is from printing shirts. So you always want to leave room for ingenuity.
And that's the case with
And
publication.
you're writing this book, and these webinars become your biggest source. It just becomes something huge.
And the technology changes so frequently. So, for example,
Exactly.
last week we were talking to Trevor Forrest about NFTs.
Right.
5 years ago, what was an NFT? That wasn't even something that we were having a conversation about.
Right.
I started my publications journey. It was, I've got this children's book and I'm going to have these more children's
Mhm.
books. And it's going to expand into ABC.
Right.
And if we're not, something that was not on my radar. And here we are. And as we continue to evolve, I mean, there's so many really neat initiatives. There are,
Right.
I forget what you call it. There's virtual reality where books are concerned. I mean,
Right.
the technology is amazing and continues to escalate as we speak.
Yeah.
So yes, I like that. Leave room for ingenuity. Really important.
Yes.
Yes. So I don't know. I'm looking at the time, and I know we've gone over my promised time. We normally go to that.
Okay.
I
That's
don't know if
okay.
anyone in the audience has a question to ask. If yes, just throw it out. If not, I think it's good to just kind of recap Richard's main points, which was always have a plan. Start with a plan. Start with a very basic type of business plan where you're considering the type of business you're going to register, cash flow projections, who's your market, who's your audience. Make sure you have everything separate accounts for you and the business. Um, Make sure you have a really easy program that you can use to keep track of income and expenditure, taxes, the works. And he recommended, so there's some easy ones that you can find. Most of these are hosted in the cloud, QuickBooks, Wave, Soho. There was another one you mentioned.
Peachtree.
Okay. Which
It's a bit dated, but it's easy to use. So that's why I'd recommend that one.
yeah. And the key is easy. As you grow and as you expand, then certainly you can invest in hiring someone to do this for you or getting the training for a more complicated program. So
Right.
nice. I mean, this is not my favorite thing to talk about because, writing is fun. But I've learned in the couple of years of publishing that without these very basic systems, without having these conversations early, everything creeps up and everything compounds. So not keeping track of your incomes and your income and your expenditure for 3 months is very different from not keeping track for, a year. And it all just starts to mount and it can feel very demotivating when you're trying to.
And overwhelming. Right.
Yeah. So,
Right.
all right. I feel like I have some homework to do. Richard, thank you so much for coming in and speaking with us today. And I hope everybody takes this conversation seriously, especially our new authors who are out there listening. Think about it early, get going, put the systems in place. Even if you don't have to use them right away, just make sure the framework is there so that once you need to access it, you're already in place. Because there's always a timeline for all of these things as well. There's a timeline for registering, so you don't want to be scrambling to get it done. Very often when you're applying for grants, when you're applying for any kind of extra funding, if you want to do Kickstarter campaigns, that kind of thing, it's going to suit you to have all of this in place already.
Right.
So a very necessary conversation. And I thank you very much, Richard, for joining us today.
Absolutely. I enjoyed it. Thank you so much for having me.
Sure, I'll have more questions and I will just pass them along once they start.
All right, no problem.
All right. Night, Richard. I'm going to wrap up. Chasing Dreamers. Make sure that you share with us your little step that you took to chase your dreams. Remember to join us every Thursday. We're here live. If you need some help with publishing, check us out at IamLisaMcLean.com. We have a range of different programs that we provide, whether you want to work in a group or one-on-one, but you need help to get your story out, give us a shout. We're here to help. Happy Thursday, everyone. I will see you 8:30 next week, same place, same time. Have a great week. Bye.